3 Triple Z.
92.3
FM.
The following program is in English.
L'chaim, thank you. You're tuned in to L'chaim, to Life, with your host Maurice Klein.
Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Shalom. It's L'chaim time. Time to get on with L'chaim, to Life, Jewish life and more. Here on 92.3 FM, 3 Triple Z, and meet our guests. As part of a long-planned move to bring more young people on board and into the fold, the AJA, Australian Jewish Association, announced earlier this year that the AJA was undergoing a process of expansion and renewal. Several founding board members would step back so that younger community members could take up leadership roles. The AJA announced last week the appointment of a new AJA board and CEO. I am delighted to have join us tonight on L'chaim, Robert Gregory, the Australian Jewish Association's new Chief Executive Officer. Robert Gregory, welcome to L'chaim, to Life, Jewish Life and More.
Thank you so much for having me, Maurice. Pleasure to be here.
Glad you can join us. Robert, after a couple of excellent years as the AJA's Public Affairs Director, you have now been appointed the CEO of the Australian Jewish Association. Please, Robert, to the L'chaim listeners who are not familiar with the organisation, what is the AJA all about?
Thanks, Maurice. Well, the AJA was started in 2017 by people across Australia, some very committed founders who were unhappy with the perceived leftward shift amongst some of our establishment organisations. And it's grown exponentially since then. So AJA stands on two platforms, which are centre-right conservative values, as understood in the Australian political context, as well as Torah values.
When you say Torah values, you're referring to traditional halachic beliefs?
Sure, yeah. So AJA has no requirement of religiosity of any of its members. We have people right across the spectrum, from completely secular to completely orthodox. But we're committed to respecting and honouring Jewish traditions. So we'll always do everything in accordance with Jewish values.
That said, the AJA welcomes all members of Judaic observance who share a devotion to Am Yisrael, the Jewish nation, and the land of Israel.
100%. We have members across all different synagogues across Australia, and we've also got members that have barely set foot in a synagogue. So it's the whole range in AJA.
What did your position as the AJA's Public Affairs Director entail?
So the position was interacting a lot with media, different media outlets, as well as politicians at a state and federal level, as well as other organisations. So handling AJA's outreach towards the community and other communities.
And back in March, I believe you and David Adler, the president of the AJA, spent a few days in Canberra meeting with lots of our MPs and other important people. What did you take away from these get-togethers?
Yeah, that's correct. In March, we were in Canberra for a visit. We met with many different politicians. And I have to say, I became quite concerned about the federal government, the Albanese government, and what steps may be planned towards Israel and the Jewish community. So that was definitely a big concern. But there was also positive meetings. This was ahead of Pesach, so we were giving matzah to several of the politicians. And I actually recently just ran into Senator, and he was thanking me. He said he enjoyed eating the matzah in his office. Positive interactions too.
And Robert, you were in Israel a couple of months back, where you, as the AJA Public Affairs Director, met with lots of people in the organisation. What was the reaction and response there to you and the AJA?
We had a very positive reaction. I met with a lot of different people, mostly in Jerusalem, but also in some other places. And I've got to say, people in Israel, they watch closely what happens in Australia. So people were asking me for updates about the local community, the organisations, the political scene, built some great connections, and very productive visit.
Tachlis. So Robert, as I mentioned in the introduction, some of the founding members of the AJA 5-6 years ago, Alan Friedman, Michael Bird, fellow past presenters at Jair, and Jeff Block, after establishing a solid, positive foundation for the Australian Jewish Association, decided it was time to step aside to make way for a new AJA board to continue the important work of the AJA. Alan, Michael and Jeff are not saying goodbye to the AJA. They will still be around with their solid support. The announcement of the new AJA board was last week with you as the CEO. Please take us through that, the new board, and what you and the board see as the future holding for the AJA going forward.
I want to start by obviously thanking the founding members, those people that built up an amazing organization, and discussion amongst AJA for some time that some people wanted to give younger members more of a chance to play a larger role. So some of the founding members decided to take a step back, and we, in one of our emails, we asked for people to come forward and express an interest in the board. We had an overwhelming response. That's why it's taken so long to appoint the new board. We've been interviewing different candidates and really just a really high caliber of people out there. So we're very happy with the new board. It's a really good mix of a lot of younger people with some much more experienced people as well. And if you have a look on our website at the profiles of the new board, you'll see many of them have served in leadership positions in previous organizations. We're very excited going forward. Now, we think some of the priorities for AJA are going to be to grow in this younger adult space. We also see politically quite a challenging environment, but we're going to continue to support the state of Israel and the people of Israel here. So we do have some exciting events planned.
I had a look at the new AJA board on the website. Dr. David Adler remains as the AJA president, with David Parasol, the new treasurer, and the new board members. And from what I read, and you mentioned it, lots of experience and energy, I would say.
I've got to agree. We've already had several of our board members have written articles and they're constantly coming up with new ideas. So definitely watch this space. There's a lot of energy in AJA.
And I would encourage our listeners to click on the AJA website and have a look at the new board members and what they're bringing to the table. Robert, as part of some of the activities and the advocacy that the AJA gets involved with, last week, the AJA received a reply from the ABC Ombudsman Office in response to a complaint. Take us through that.
We've actually had several complaints upheld this year against the ABC over inaccurate reporting. This latest one was over a terrorist attack in Israel, where the headline incorrectly focused on the terrorist being killed and played down the Israeli victim who was killed. We lodged a complaint with the ABC Ombudsman. That's been upheld, and as I said, I think this is about the third complaint we've had upheld just in the last couple of months. So the ABC is a repeat offender.
Repeat offender is an understatement, and that's an outstanding outcome. And from my observation, the AJA more often than not generally seems to be the first cab off the rank when it comes to the ABC's inaccurate, hostile coverage of Israel. It also applies to many other anti-Israel situations and human rights situations. The AJA speaks up. It does not hesitate to call things out, correct?
That's correct. We've got to give credit to, we have a very wide network of supporters across the country tipping us off constantly about different incidences concerning Israel and the Jewish community. Every day, the email inbox receives new information. So thank everyone out there for helping us do our jobs.
Robert, in the 5-6 years, the AJA has experienced enormous growth and support, clearly validating the AJA's raison d'etre and need. The AJA on social media, by far and away, leading the established Jewish pack.
Yeah, I mean, despite how short an amount of time in comparison AJA has been around, as Dr. Adler likes to say, Australian Jews are voting with their clicks, and AJA is now by far the largest Jewish organisation on social media. On Facebook, we're coming up to 30,000 followers soon. On Twitter, it's coming up to 4,000. This is all in addition to thousands of people who've subscribed to our email list. So it's great to see the growth that's going on.
30,000 followers in 5-6 years. That's an outstanding achievement. And all this, sadly, has been achieved with some of our Jewish communal organisations and leaders right from the start being quite hostile and resisting the AJA's presence and existence. Labor's Mark Dreyfus recently stated that the AJA president, David Adler, doesn't represent anybody. That doesn't stack up. Hostilities towards the AJA from some of our established Jewish communal organisations and leaders has intensified recently. One prominent leader continues to refer to the AJA as a fringe group.
Well, we're certainly not a fringe group. We've got more followers, more supporters than many of the other organisations. I think in any industry, when you have rapid change, like for example, the taxi industry, AJ is the Uber as a metaphor. So things get shaken up and established legacy organizations feel threatened. So you might be seeing some of that play out.
Robert, you and the AJA, in the interest of our Jewish community and Israel, are only too happy to extend a warm hand and work with any of our communal organizations.
That's completely correct. I released a video where I said I'm happy to sit down and meet with anyone from any organization. And if anyone's listening now and they're in touch with these leaders of these organizations, they should encourage them to meet with AJA and we can hopefully discuss some of the issues. And I should just say we do have good relations behind the scenes with people in many of these organizations and do regularly meet with them, not always publicized.
And Robert, unlike some of our Jewish communal organizations recently, the AJA hasn't joined the chorus of anti-Israel government bashing.
Yes, I mean, I was a bit surprised by some of what we've seen lately. I think there was a principle until recently that diaspora Jewish organizations didn't openly and publicly criticize Israel's government. And unfortunately, we haven't seen that upheld. The AJA position is that the government of Israel is for the people of Israel to decide. If someone wants to have an opinion about Israel's government, they're welcome to make aliyah. They can vote and they can express their opinion. But for us, as a diaspora Jewish organization, we take the position we don't condemn or attack Israel's government.
Absolutely. I'm main to that. And Robert, one amazing achievement of the AJA in such a short time is the exposure it has achieved on national media, on national TV. It is networked in such a way that every time there is a situation in Israel, the Jewish community, it achieves exposure on, well, let's call it Sky News.
Yeah, I would say Dr. Adler is probably the most called upon leader in Australia's Jewish community by the media. Probably done close to 100 interviews on Sky News. We've been growing a lot in the written media. Just last week, I was published in New South Wales's Daily Telegraph, which is the largest newspaper up there. So we're all across the media.
And Robert, whenever I point this out to people, the exposure that the AJA is able to achieve, their answer is, conservative Murdoch network. To which my reply is, who cares? Every time there is a Jewish issue or an issue with Israel, the AJA is out there getting exposure for it.
Well, I mean, we greatly value those conservative media. A lot of people do watch it. I've been in Labor MPs' offices and they've had Sky News playing in the background. It's not just there. We've also been interviewed on ABC, on SBS, on some of the free-to-air television channels. On AJA's social media, we've had individual posts reaching the millions of views. So it's not just conservative people listening and watching. We really do have a massive reach.
Robert, the AJA has a very popular weekly Zoom, 8 p.m. on Wednesday, immediately preceding L'chaim to Life. The previous guest list has been second to none. Tonight's guest was Moira Deeming, MP, standing for the rights of women and children. I missed it, but I will be clicking on the AJA YouTube page and clicking on to the Moira recording. It will also be on the AJA Facebook page. The AJA sends out 2-3 email updates each week. How can our L'chaim listeners subscribe to the emails? How can our L'chaim listeners support and follow the AJA, the Australian Jewish Association?
Best thing to do is to join the free email list where we advertise all upcoming events and other important things. So do that at our website, jewishassociation.org.au. And as you mentioned, tonight we just had Moira Deeming MP. It was really excellent. And everyone's got their Wednesday nights taken care of. You listen to the AJA Zoom and you stay on and listen to Maurice's L'chaim show. So that's all sorted. Next week, we've got a special episode for the 30th anniversary of the Oslo Accords. So we'll have commentator Mordechai Kadar and film producer Hugh Kitson leading a session. So it should be really good. And it's probably the best attended weekly speaker event in the Australian Jewish community. We have about 150 on Zoom, and then it's also, as you mentioned, on Facebook Live, on our YouTube, and a few other different channels. So quite a lot of people are watching.
I can't wait till next week. Mordechai Kadar is outstanding. 30 years since the Oslo Accords. I wasn't up to date with that. And Hugh Kitson, a very, very supporting Christian Zionist. Robert, before we go, you were my guest 4 or 5 years back on Shabbat Shalom with an organisation, Young Judeans. Are the Young Judeans still happening?
That's right, yeah, a bit of a throwback to then. That was an organisation set up pretty much along the same principles as AJA. It was young people unhappy with some of the youth organizations out there, that they weren't supportive enough of Israel. And I think a lot of these people from Young Judea have now become AJA members. So it shows that the same sort of issues we were raising back then are still relevant today. So that was a great interview I did with you back then, all those years ago.
Good foundation for you. Newly appointed CEO of the AJA, the Australian Jewish Association, Robert Gregory, many thanks for joining us tonight on L'chaim to Life, Jewish Life and More with your important AJA work. Mazel tov to you on your new position and to the board. Yasher koach to you, David Adler, and the board. Shana tova, Am Yisrael Chai, L'chaim.
Thank you. Shana tova and L'chaim.
You are listening to the English language news of Kan, the Israeli Public Broadcasting Corporation.
And for some good news. Actually not good news, great news. L'chaim to Life, Jewish Life and More, here on 92.3 FM 3ZZZ, broadcasting the latest news